Hij is een van de bekendste politici ter wereld. Deed mee aan 2 presidentiële verkiezingscampagnes, waarin hij miljoenen, vaak jonge kiezers op de been wist te brengen. Met zijn progressieve ideeën staat hij voor economische gelijkheid, sociale rechtvaardigheid. Bernie Sanders zit hier aan tafel met zijn net verschenen boek. Althans, de Nederlandse vertaling is net verschenen. Het is oké om kwaad te zijn op het kapitalisme. Senator, welcome.
Thank you very much.
We're honored that you're here.
My pleasure.
Let's turn to Israel first, if you don't mind. You have lived in Israel. You know people there, and I wonder, have you been in touch?
Well, I have some cousins who were there, and I was there many, many decades ago. I think, Peter, the tragedy of what Hamas did is not just the terrible loss of life that we're seeing on both sides, is that it will feed, in my view, the extremism as we go into the future. Mm-hmm. The situation in Gaza for many years has been a disaster, absolute disaster. And I have had real concerns about Israeli occupation and trying to work on that. But the idea that Hamas comes in, kills innocent people, will only harden the extreme right in Israel, maybe give some encouragement to terrorists in the Palestinian area, and inflame what already has been a terrible, terrible situation. So the hope is that calmer minds on both sides will try to rectify this, and we'll try to deal with the long-term crisis that exists in the area.
We found a clip of 2020. You were in the Democratic Party debate, and you were asked about your view and your support for Israel. That was 3 years ago. Let's have a look.
What would you say to American Jews who might be concerned you're not, from their perspective, supportive enough of Israel? And specifically, sir, would you move the U.S. Embassy back to Tel Aviv?
I am very proud of being Jewish. I actually lived in Israel for some months. But what I happen to believe is that right now, sadly, tragically, in Israel, through Bibi Netanyahu, you have a reactionary racist who is now running that country. And I happen to believe that what our foreign policy in the Mideast should be about is absolutely protecting the independence and security of Israel. But you cannot ignore the suffering of the Palestinian people.
Well, I think you have nothing to add to that, do you?
No, I do not.
No. Okay. So could we in fact say that maybe Israel is more vulnerable because of its government?
It's one of these terrible things that extremism breeds extremism. I think the unemployment rate among young people in Gaza is 70-80%. Intermittent water, intermittent electricity, terrible, terrible living conditions. And you now have real live racists in the Israeli government. And all of that will feed each other. And then when Hamas goes in and kidnaps and kills innocent people, it will only inflame the situation even worse.
Yeah.
It's a terrible situation.
Yeah, it is. And Israel itself warns of a long and difficult war. It's a frightening perspective.
It is.
Your opening words in this book, the older you get, the more conservative. But for you, it's different. The older you get, the more angry you get.
Yes.
Is anger a useful
I think
force?
it is. I think it is. Look, what this book is about, and I think what we have got to do, Peter, is take a hard look at what's going on in the world today and ask questions that, at least in my country, are not often asked in Congress or in the corporate media. And that is, today we have more income and wealth inequality in America, and I think in many countries around the world, than we have ever had. In America, for example, you have only 3 people owning more wealth than about a half of American society. You have more concentration of ownership, where large multinational corporations control sector after sector. Meanwhile, while the very rich are getting much richer, you know what else is happening? Real wages, real weekly wages, inflation accounted for wages for the average American worker, guess what? Is lower today than it was 50 years ago. So the rich are getting much richer. Millions of people are falling further and further behind. And I think what's going on in America, a lot of people are saying enough is enough.
Yeah.
we got to move forward in a different direction.
And with this message, you appeal to a lot of people, especially young people. Why do you think especially those young people are...
Well, not just young people. We appeal to a lot of working class people as well. I'll tell you why. Because young people are growing up in my country. Know something about my country, less so about Europe.
Okay.
They're looking around. The wages they're earning, the salaries they're earning, in many cases are lower than their parents. They're finding it harder. They're buying homes at a later age than their parents. The healthcare system that we have in America is a total disaster, and many of them cannot afford healthcare. And I'll tell you what else. You touched upon this in your recent interview. They're looking at climate change. And I have talked to young people who say, you know what, Bernie? I'm not sure that we want to have, as a couple, we want to have children because we worry so much about the future of this planet. So I think young people are sick and tired of status quo politics. They want more democracy. They want more equality in the world.
Yeah.
And they want the entire global community to deal with climate.
And this is where anger can be a useful force. As you said last week in the political crisis in Washington, I want to touch on that shortly with you. Currently, the House is dysfunctional without a speaker. A new shutdown of the government is looming in 40 days. Is this a nightmare to democracy? And do you see anger among American people?
One of the threats, and I think, and I hope many people in Europe understand this, is that for a variety of reasons, I think significantly economic, cultural reasons, a lot of people in America are giving up on democracy. And when they're looking at Washington and saying, you know what, I'm working longer hours for low wages, I can't afford childcare, I can't afford to send my kid to college, we're seeing more extreme weather disturbances. Does anybody in Washington know what's going on? Does anyone care about me? Do they care about anything else other than raising money from rich people to run their campaigns? And when you have that climate, Peter, democracy itself is endangered because then you have people like Trump coming along and saying, we don't need, in essence, don't worry about the law, don't worry about rules. What you need is a real strong man. I'm going to take care of everything. So it's a dangerous situation that worries many of us.
One pressing issue in the United States right now, and not only there, is the military aid to Ukraine. Yeah. How uncertain, in view of what we just discussed, is military support for Ukraine now?
I personally believe that it's absolutely essential that we provide the support. I think Putin what he has done is horrific. And he cannot be allowed to defeat and take over Ukraine. I believe that within a reasonably short period of time, in fact, the Congress will come up with the money that President Biden wants.
They will?
Yes.
So this small group of Republicans playing hardball, you say they will see what's needed, but how strong is American democracy if a minority, and I also think of Israel here, if a minority is holding so much power?
That's a very good question. That's an excellent question. And you got 10, 15 people in the House of Representatives, which has 435 people, are able to bring that body down, get rid of their speaker. It is a very dangerous situation. But back to Ukraine. I think virtually all Democrats support increased aid for Ukraine, and a number of Republicans do as well.
Your father, Senator Sanders, was a Jewish immigrant from Poland. His family was killed by the Nazis during World War II. Is this on your mind today?
Yes, of course it is.
In your work?
Well, it's always on my mind. That leads us to me to the view that we have got to fight racism in all of its ugly facets, wherever it may be.
Yeah. But what role does this actually play in your political life?
Well, it's always the fight against, I saw what happened to my family. I see what is happening and has happened in America, especially to our black population. And it makes me understand that we can never tolerate racism. We have to fight it in all of its forms.
Yeah. In your long political career, you have seen many people of the working class start voting for Donald Trump. What's behind it?
Well, I think, as I mentioned before, we have in America today massive income and wealth inequality. 60% of our people live paycheck to paycheck. We have in America the highest rate of childhood poverty of almost any major country on earth. Our healthcare system is really quite broken. And people are looking around, and Democrats have talked a good game, and they're saying, are you really prepared to deliver? And I think one of the points we make in the book is that if we're going to save democracy, if we're going to defend the rights of working people, the Democratic Party itself needs to undergo a major transformation. And that is, instead of being as dependent as it is on big money, we got to open the doors to the working class of our country. And what we're seeing, by the way, Peter, right now, as we speak, is some very, very important and interesting changes in American society. And that is the working class, through their unions, in an unprecedented way in recent history, are standing up and fighting back. So you're seeing the head of the United Automobile Workers. Their union is on strike, and what they're saying is, hey, something is wrong. CEO of General Motors makes $29 million a year. Our guys are making $16 to $17 an hour. You're making billions. Our people are falling further behind. That ain't acceptable. We're going to take you on, and they're doing a great job at that.
Still, Trump is also doing a great job in the polls. And you said before, Trumpism is in fact a failure of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
What did you mean?
What I mean is that most people in America are not racist. Some are. Most people are not sexist. Most people are not homophobes. Most people are not xenophobes. And I think most Americans understand that Trump is a pathological liar. He is now under 4 indictments. During his administration, he gave huge tax breaks to the rich. The Republican Party wants to cut Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, which is extremely unpopular. And yet, I think what is going on is that people have looked at the Democrats and say, you talk about the needs of working people, yet we're falling further and further behind. Stand up for us. Take on the powerful special interest. And that's what we're trying to do right now. And I think if we do it, and it's beginning to happen, it was not an accident that President Biden was out there on the picket line. That has never happened in American history. A president of the United States out on a picket line with striking workers. And what Biden is saying is, we're going to do our best to make the Democratic Party stand with the working class and take on big money interests.
Okay. During this presidential campaign in 2019, you suffered a heart attack, and in your book you described this moment more of actually a psychological blow than a physical one. What did you mean by that?
Well, I have been blessed with good health my entire life. When I was a kid, I was a long-distance runner, so I had a lot of endurance. And to me, it was absolutely unthinkable when I was told that I was having a heart attack. It was hard for me to even believe. I just couldn't believe it. It was my body had failed me in a way that had never been the case before.
No. Does it worry you sometimes that you may not have the time to fulfill all the ideas you have about democracy?
Well, it certainly does. I mean, there's so much work to be done in so many areas. As I mentioned a moment ago, I worry very much about the future of this planet if we don't get a handle on climate change. I worry about democracy. I worry about income and wealth inequality. I am chairman of a committee which deals with health care in America, and I worry that 85 million Americans are uninsured or underinsured. I worry about the corruption, the political system in America in which billionaires literally can give as much money as they want. That's not democracy. So those are a lot of the worries, yes, and we're working hard trying to address them.
Okay, and this deep division we discussed earlier in American society, the Trumpism and the other people, and how are you going to, do you have any ideas about how this deep division can be healed?
You're right that there is a deep division. But on another level, there is not a deep division. You ask people in America, should the very wealthiest people stop paying their fair share of taxes? And if you're a conservative Republican or a progressive Democrat, you know what you'll say? Yes. Should all people in America be guaranteed health care as a right? Answer is yes. Should young people in America have the right to get a higher education regardless of their income? People say yes. So the interesting thing is around economic issues, actually the division is not all that great. The division is great around cultural issues. like abortion or guns. And that's something we have to address.
Yeah, there are concerns about Joe Biden's age. I could mention your age.
You could mention it.
But I don't.
Don't mention it. All right.
But where's the new generation of political talent?
I'll tell you something. I'll tell you where it is. That same U.S. Congress, that House of Representatives you just talked about, right?
Yeah.
You may have 10 or 15 right-wing extremist Republicans disrupting that Congress, but go to the other side, and you know what you're going to find? A progressive caucus, which is now stronger than it has ever been before, composed mostly of young people, really, really wonderful people who are fighting for economic justice, social justice, racial justice, often young people of color, women of color. That is the future of American politics.
Are you going to do it? Are you going to step in again?
No, Joe Biden is running for president.
And not Bernie Sanders?
Not Bernie Sanders.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Bedankt voor het kijken. En vond je dit een goed gesprek? Vergeet je dan niet te abonneren. Een like of een comment achterlaten kan natuurlijk ook. Oh ja, had je dit al gehoord?
So at the end of this journey, are you building a sustainable business? Because the last thing you want is for the government to spend money and have a business which cannot survive.